Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine? Not from the cold, but from the sudden, stark realization that everything you thought was real was a carefully constructed lie, that the ground beneath your feet wasn't solid, but shifting sand, ready to swallow you whole. I remember that exact moment, the precise second when my world fractured. It wasn't a slow dawning, but a brutal, instantaneous snap, like a bone breaking under immense pressure. It happened on Christmas Eve, a night meant for warmth and belonging. But for me, it became the stage for a public execution of my spirit. The echo of my own body hitting the polished hardwood floor still haunts my quiet moments, a phantom thud against my ribs. But it wasn't the physical impact that truly shattered me. It was the deafening silence that followed, the collective gasp held by 23 pairs of eyes, all fixed on me, yet none offering a hand. Not a single soul moved, not even the woman who gave me life. This isn't just a story about a fall. It's about the profound, soul-deep betrayal that precedes it, the quiet erosion of trust, and the terrifying question of what happens when the people who are supposed to love you most simply watch. What would you do if your entire foundation crumbled in a single brutal instant? The air in the dining room had been thick with a false cheer, a brittle facade that barely concealed the simmering resentments beneath. Christmas Eve at the Caldwell estate was always an elaborate affair, a tradition my late father had cherished, filling the grand hall with laughter, warmth, and the genuine spirit of togetherness. But since his passing 5 years ago, and the subsequent arrival of Marcus, my stepfather, the gatherings had taken on a different hue. The laughter felt forced, the warmth artificial, and the spirit of togetherness had been replaced by a palpable tension, a silent competition for attention that Marcus orchestrated with a chilling precision. I, Elara Vance, now 32, had always found solace in the familiar rituals, clinging to them as anchors in a sea of change. This year, however, the anchors felt like chains. Marcus, a man whose charm was as superficial as his expensive suits, had been particularly insufferable that evening. He'd started drinking his special reserve brandy, which I suspected was just cheap liquor poured into a crystal decanter, before the appetizers were even served. His eyes, usually cold and calculating, gleamed with a predatory amusement as he surveyed the room, his gaze lingering on me with an unsettling intensity. He made a series of veiled comments throughout dinner, each one a subtle jab at my presence, my inheritance, my very right to exist in that space. Some people, he'd purr, earn their place at the table through hard work and contribution. Others simply occupy it by default. My cousin, Sophia, a kind soul who always saw through Marcus's veneer, kept shooting me worried glances, her eyes asking, "What is his problem tonight?" I tried to ignore him, focusing instead on the intricate patterns of the antique silverware, counting the seconds, wishing the night away. The clock on the mantelpiece, a magnificent grandfather clock that had belonged to my great-grandfather, chimed precisely at 8 o'clock, a sound that usually brought a sense of comforting tradition. But tonight, it felt like a death knell. Just as the last chime faded, the heavy oak doors to the dining room burst open with a dramatic flourish. It was Serena, Marcus's daughter, 2 hours late, as always, her arms laden with designer shopping bags despite her recent public declaration of bankruptcy. Marcus's face, which had been a mask of bored indifference moments before, lit up with an almost blinding adoration. He rose from his seat, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips, and walked directly towards me. My heart began to pound, a frantic drum against my ribs, sensing the impending storm. I was sitting in my seat, the one my father had always called Elara's throne, a place of honor at the head of the table, directly opposite where he used to sit. It was a small, symbolic gesture, a way for me to feel his presence, his protection. Marcus stopped beside me, his shadow falling over me like a shroud. He cleared his throat, his voice booming across the suddenly silent room. "My dearest Serena," he announced, his gaze sweeping over the stunned faces of our family, "needs a proper place at this table, a place befitting her status as my real daughter." He then turned to me, his eyes narrowed. "Elara, darling, perhaps you could find a more humble spot tonight, somewhere less prominent." My blood ran cold. I didn't move. I couldn't. My feet felt rooted to the floor, my mind struggling to process the blatant cruelty of his words, the public shaming. This wasn't just about a chair. It was about erasing me, diminishing my father's legacy, asserting his absolute dominance. When I hesitated, a flicker of defiance in my eyes, Marcus's smirk widened. He reached down, his hand gripping the back of my chair, and with a sudden, brutal yank, he pulled it out from under me. I gasped, scrambling to regain my balance, but it was too late. My legs tangled in the heavy damask tablecloth, sending crystal glasses and plates crashing to the floor. I landed hard on my hip, the impact reverberating through my bones, a sharp, searing pain blooming in my side. My silk dress ripped, and a splash of cranberry sauce, bright red like spilled blood, splattered across my grandmother's antique lace. The sound of my fall was deafening, followed by an even more profound, horrifying silence. 23 faces, frozen in various states of shock, disbelief, or calculated indifference, stared at me. My own mother, Eleanor, sat motionless, her face a carefully constructed mask of neutrality, a skill she had perfected over years of avoiding conflict. My Uncle Robert, bless his perpetually clueless heart, had his phone out, recording the entire spectacle, probably thinking it would make a viral video for his social media. My grandmother, a woman of formidable grace, let out a tiny, almost imperceptible gasp, the kind she usually reserved for a misplaced fork. But no one, not a single person, moved to help me. I lay there, amidst the shattered crystal and spilled cranberry, feeling utterly exposed, utterly alone. As I slowly, painfully, pushed myself up, my hip throbbing, I heard Marcus mutter, "You should be grateful you were even invited, Alara. Some people know their place." But as I stood, my eyes met his, and in that moment, amidst the chaos and the humiliation, I saw something else. On the kitchen counter, just beyond the dining room archway, lay Marcus's business phone, unlocked and face up. In my world of corporate compliance, we call that an opportunity. I left that night, my dignity in tatters, but with a new burning resolve, and a secret weapon, photos of every single message on Marcus's phone, tucked away on my father's old, forgotten laptop, hidden in my car. He thought he had pushed a nobody. He was about to learn that sometimes the nobody knows everything. What he didn't realize was that this wasn't just about a chair. It was about a legacy, a betrayal, and a spiritual reckoning that had been brewing for years, waiting for the perfect storm to unleash its fury. To truly grasp the seismic shift that occurred that Christmas Eve, to understand why a simple push from a chair felt like the final, crushing blow in a war I hadn't even realized I was fighting, we need to rewind. We need to journey back to the decade that preceded it, a period where the foundations of my life, meticulously laid by my beloved father, were systematically eroded, brick by painful brick. Marcus didn't just walk into our lives. He glided in, a serpent in a tailored suit, cloaked in an aura of manufactured sympathy and calculated charm. My father, Arthur Vance, had been gone for 2 years, leaving behind a gaping void in our family, a silence that echoed in every room of our once vibrant home. My mother, Eleanor, a woman of grace and quiet strength, was adrift, lost in a grief so profound it seemed to consume her very essence. She was vulnerable, a lighthouse without its guiding light, and Marcus, like a predator sensing weakness, found her. He appeared at our community grief support group, a place meant for healing and shared sorrow. Looking back, his presence there felt like a wolf attending a sheep support circle, his eyes scanning for the most susceptible. He zeroed in on my mother with an almost terrifying efficiency, a man on a mission. He spoke of his own fabricated loss, his voice a soothing balm, his touch gentle, his gaze seemingly filled with understanding. He painted himself as a pillar of strength, a man of God, a knight in shining armor ready to rescue a damsel in distress. But even then, something about him felt off. His armor, though polished, seemed to gleam with a synthetic sheen, and the stories he wove felt a little too perfect, a little too rehearsed. He drove a leased luxury car he clearly couldn't afford, always making sure it was parked prominently, a subtle display of wealth he didn't possess. He was a master illusionist, and my grieving mother, desperate for comfort, for a semblance of the life she had lost, fell under his spell. The favoritism, the insidious poison that would slowly corrupt our family dynamics, began subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. When Serena, Marcus's daughter, turned 18, she received a brand new gleaming sports car, a lavish gift presented with much fanfare and a saccharine speech about her bright future. I remember standing there, a polite smile plastered on my face, a knot forming in my stomach. A year later, when I reached my own 18th birthday, a milestone I had always envisioned celebrating with my father, Marcus presented me with a rather worn bus pass and a lengthy, condescending lecture about the virtues of self-sufficiency and earning your way in the world. He even had the audacity to pat me on the head, as if I were a child. I remember a hollow laugh escaping my lips, a sound devoid of humor. I genuinely believed, in my naive youth, that he was trying to build my character, to instill a sense of resilience. The bitter irony of that thought still stings. The joke, as it turned out, was profoundly on me. It was during my college years that the true depths of Marcus's manipulation began to surface, though I was too blinded by loyalty and a desperate hope for family harmony to fully comprehend it then. My father, a man of foresight and boundless love, had meticulously set up robust education funds for me before his untimely passing. I had seen the statements when I was younger, the impressive figures growing steadily, a testament to his unwavering commitment to my future. But when the time came to access them, to pay for my tuition at the university I had dreamed of attending, they were mysteriously depleted. "Market volatility, Alara," Marcus had explained with a dismissive wave of his hand, his voice dripping with feigned sympathy. "Unfortunate timing, my dear. The economy, you know." Yet somehow, amidst this supposed financial downturn, he managed to conjure up a staggering sum, nearly $60,000, to fund Serena's enrollment in an exclusive private art college, a place she promptly dropped out of in her junior year, to pursue a fleeting career as a social media influencer. Her online presence, a collection of heavily filtered selfies and vague motivational quotes, boasted a paltry few hundred followers, half of whom were undoubtedly bots. The stark contrast was a constant, gnawing ache in my heart, a silent testament to the injustice that permeated our home. My mother, the vibrant, compassionate woman who once chaired charity galas and commanded respect with her quiet authority, underwent a heartbreaking transformation during those years. She became a shadow of her former self, a mere echo of Marcus's opinions and desires. Her once independent spirit seemed to wither under his constant, subtle pressure. "Whatever Marcus thinks is best," became her ubiquitous catchphrase, repeated with a vacant stare, as if she were a pull-string doll, programmed with a limited set of responses. It was as if her grief had created a vacuum, and Marcus had expertly filled it, slowly siphoning away her autonomy, her voice, her very identity. The real knife twist, however, came with the family business. Vance Logistics, the company my father had built from the ground up with sheer grit and unwavering vision, a small but incredibly profitable enterprise, was now firmly under Marcus's control. He had, with cunning precision, convinced my mother to appoint him CEO while she was still reeling from the shock of my father's death, her judgment clouded by sorrow. I watched him parade around my father's office, using his golf clubs, sitting in his cherished leather chair, acting as if he had earned any of it, as if he hadn't simply usurped a legacy built on love and hard work. But what Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have foreseen, was that I had been watching more closely than he ever realized. I was a silent observer, a quiet sentinel, and the seeds of doubt he had sown were slowly, inexorably, beginning to sprout. 3 years into their marriage, during a particularly tense family dinner, Marcus, in a moment of careless arrogance, left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. My eyes, trained in the meticulous world of corporate compliance, instinctively gravitated towards the screen. I saw it then, discrepancies in the company books. Small at first, almost negligible, but enough to trigger a faint alarm bell in my mind. 5 years in, I started noticing strange property transfers, assets moving in ways that simply didn't make sense, transactions that raised red flags in my professional sphere. By the 7th year, I had begun to quietly, methodically, keep copies of everything. Every suspicious document, every questionable email, every financial statement that seemed out of place. I stored them away, not knowing why, just driven by an instinct, a deep-seated feeling that something was profoundly wrong. Then, last Thanksgiving, my grandmother, a woman whose wisdom was as deep as her silence, pulled me aside in the kitchen. Her eyes, usually sparkling with gentle humor, were serious, almost urgent. She pressed something cool and metallic into my hand. "Your father's old laptop," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the clatter of pots and pans. "The one from the garage. Don't let Marcus know you have it. There are things on there, Ilara. Things he should have told you before he died." She then returned to basting the turkey, her face impassive, as if she hadn't just handed me a potential bomb, a key to unlocking a decade of deceit. The weight of that laptop, the unspoken warning in her eyes, settled deep within my soul, a premonition of the storm yet to come. The weight of my grandmother's secret gift, that old, unassuming laptop, felt like a physical burden in the trunk of my car. For a year, it sat there, a silent sentinel, a Pandora's box I was too afraid to open, too afraid of what I might find, and perhaps, even more terrifyingly, what I might not find. The thought of confronting the truth, of shattering the fragile peace I had painstakingly built around myself, was paralyzing. I continued my life, working 60-hour weeks in corporate compliance, meticulously navigating the labyrinthine rules and regulations of the business world, all while taking night classes to earn my CPA. It was a relentless grind, a desperate attempt to prove my worth, to build something of my own, something that couldn't be taken away by a man like Marcus. All the while, the whispers persisted, the constant reminders from Marcus that Serena, his real daughter, was the future of the family, despite her endless string of spectacular failures. Serena's life was a revolving door of grand ambitions and swift collapses, each one costing thousands, each one funded by the very company my father had poured his life into. First, she was going to be a renowned fashion designer, launching a boutique that lasted less than 6 months. Then, a high-end party planner, whose only major event ended in a catering disaster and a lawsuit. After that, a life coach, a title that struck me as profoundly ironic, given her inability to manage her own chaotic existence. Each failure was met with Marcus's theatrical rages about ungrateful millennials and the burden of supporting artistic genius, only for him to somehow, miraculously, conjure more funds for her next ill-fated venture. The pattern was so clear, so predictable, you could set your watch by it. Serena would fail, Marcus would rage, and then, like clockwork, money would disappear from Vance Logistics to fuel her next disaster. It was a constant, infuriating drain, a testament to his blind favoritism and her bottomless entitlement. I watched, I documented, and the fire in my heart, ignited by that initial spark of doubt, grew steadily, fueled by each new injustice. That Christmas night, after the humiliation at the dinner table, I found myself back in my quiet apartment, the ice pack on my throbbing hip a stark contrast to the inferno raging within my soul. The expensive champagne I had brought for the family toast sat unopened on my counter, its festive promise now a cruel mockery. Humiliation, I discovered, paired far better with bitter coffee and a simmering righteous rage. It was then, in the quiet solitude of my apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of a shattered holiday, that I knew the time had come. The old laptop, the one I had hidden in my closet for a year, too scared to touch, too scared of what it might reveal, now called to me with an undeniable urgency. The USB drive my grandmother had pressed into my hand felt heavy, almost sentient in my palm. Tonight, I thought, was the night. Tonight, I would finally look. With trembling hands, I plugged in the old laptop, its familiar hum a nostalgic echo of my father's presence. The screen flickered to life, and a wave of emotion washed over me. The password, a simple, almost childlike combination, was my birthday. My brilliant father, a genius in business, had always been endearingly terrible with passwords. What loaded onto the screen made my hands shake even harder. Email archives stretching back 15 years, a digital chronicle of a life I missed so desperately. Folders meticulously labeled, insurance will for Ilara, trust documents, Vance Logistics, and one that made my stomach drop, a chilling premonition of what was to come. If something happens. It was as if my father, even in his final days, had known, had anticipated this very moment, leaving me a breadcrumb trail through the darkness. The first discovery hit me like a bucket of ice water, a shock that stole my breath. It was my father's will, the real one, not the watered-down version Marcus had presented during probate. This document was a masterpiece of legal foresight, filled with specific protections I had never seen, never even imagined. The family business, Vance Logistics, was supposed to be held in an ironclad trust until I turned 30, with mandatory distributions starting at 25. The house, our beloved family home, was explicitly stated to never be put in Marcus's name. There were safeguards, provisions, clauses upon clauses designed to protect everything my father had built, everything he held dear, from any potential predator. So, where was this will during probate? Why had I never seen it? The questions swirled in my mind, a whirlwind of disbelief and dawning horror. I then pulled up the photos I had taken from Marcus's phone earlier that night. Thank God for his narcissism, which had required a 15-minute photo shoot with the Christmas ham, giving me ample time to snap every message. His text messages, a digital tapestry of deceit, told a story more compelling and dramatic than any Netflix series. Serena, his real daughter, owed astronomical sums of money to individuals with names like Big Tony and Vegas Mike. The numbers made my eyes water. A staggering $200,000, perhaps even more. Marcus had been juggling creditors like a desperate circus act, a precarious dance on the edge of financial ruin. And then, I found it. The mother lode. A series of incriminating messages between Marcus and someone named Carl, discussing the restructuring of company assets, the movement of inventory offshore, the establishment of shell companies, and the audacious use of Vance Logistics itself as collateral for a series of loans that were clearly funding Serena's extravagant, failing lifestyle. In my line of work, in the meticulous world of corporate compliance, we have a very clear, very damning word for this: fraud. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, revealing a picture far more sinister than I had ever dared to imagine. But the night was far from over, and the truth, like a relentless tide, was only just beginning to surge. As the full weight of Marcus's deceit settled upon me, a cold, hard knot of fury tightened in my stomach. It wasn't just about the money, or the business, or even the blatant favoritism. It was about the desecration of my father's memory, the systematic dismantling of everything he had built, the quiet betrayal of my mother's trust. My phone buzzed, a jarring interruption to the silent storm raging within me. It was the family WhatsApp group, now going absolutely insane. Uncle Robert, bless his oblivious heart, had posted his video of my fall, complete with crying, laughing emojis. But the responses weren't what he expected. My cousin Sophia, ever the voice of reason, had typed, "Robert, what the hell is wrong with you?" Aunt Carol, usually reserved, added, "This is disgusting. Absolutely shameful." The tide was turning, even among those who had remained silent moments before. The collective conscience, it seemed, was finally stirring, albeit slowly. Then, my phone rang again. It was Sophia. Her voice, usually calm and steady, was laced with a frantic urgency. "Ilara," she began, without preamble, "I've been doing some paralegal work for a firm handling foreclosures. Just part-time, you know. And I saw something that made my blood run cold. Your mother's house, Ilara. Our family home. It was on a preliminary list." My heart seized in my chest. "What are you talking about, Sophia?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible. "Marcus," she continued, her voice dropping to a horrified whisper, "he's taken out 3 mortgages on it, without telling anyone. The house your father built with his own hands, the place where we grew up, where we celebrated every holiday, it's about to be lost. To pay for Serena's failed boutique, her failed food truck, her failed everything." The words hit me like a physical blow, a final devastating confirmation of Marcus's boundless greed and utter disregard for anything sacred. The spiritual foundation of our family, the very roof over our heads, was crumbling. In that moment, a profound stillness settled over me, the throbbing in my hip, the sting of humiliation, the ache of betrayal, all of it coalesced into a singular, unwavering resolve. The fear that had paralyzed me for a year, the hesitation to open my father's laptop, vanished, replaced by a clarity so sharp it felt almost divine. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about my father's legacy, my mother's future, and the very soul of our family. I opened my laptop. The the screen a beacon in the dim light of my apartment, and my fingers flew across the keyboard. Every email I wrote was a meticulously crafted weapon, honed by years of compliance training, infused with a righteous fury. Each one was scheduled to send at precisely 3 a.m., a silent, digital avalanche set to bury Marcus's carefully constructed empire of lies. The recipients were carefully chosen, a strategic network designed to dismantle his world from every angle. Frank's business partners, the ones who had blindly profited from his schemes, would receive detailed documentation of his fraud. The IRS tip line would get 5 years of meticulously documented discrepancies, complete with a bow on top. The State Attorney General's office would receive a comprehensive report outlining his racketeering and corporate malfeasance. Brittany's creditors, Big Tony, and Vegas Mike would receive the real treasure: Marcus's actual financial statements, his hidden accounts, and irrefutable proof that he had been lying about his finances while his daughter skipped payment after payment. And finally, my mother. She would receive the real will, the one my father had intended, along with documentation of every property transfer, every fund withdrawal, every single thing Marcus had stolen while she grieved. Each email was perfect, professional, and utterly devastating. 10 years of compliance training was about to pay off in ways my company never imagined. And as a final poetic touch, I included Uncle Robert's viral video in several of them, letting the world see exactly who Marcus Caldwell truly was: a man who would physically assault a family member for a chair. I finished the last email as the first hint of dawn began to paint the sky outside my window. My body ached, my mind was exhausted, but my spirit felt strangely invigorated, lighter than it had been in years. I had done it. I had set the wheels of justice in motion. I woke up at 5:58 a.m. on Christmas morning, 2 minutes before my alarm, a testament to the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. I made myself a strong cup of coffee, the bitter warmth a welcome contrast to the cold dread that had plagued me for so long. I sat in my father's old reading chair, the worn leather a comforting embrace, and waited. The silence of the early morning was profound, pregnant with anticipation. It was the calm before the storm, the quiet before the explosion. At exactly 6:23 a.m., as if on cue, Marcus's world began to explode. The first call came from Carl, his primary business partner. I could hear Marcus's phone ringing from my apartment, 3 floors up in the same building. Another luxury my mother had been manipulated into paying for. Then another ring, then another. By 6:45 a.m., the calls were continuous, a relentless symphony of impending doom. I pulled up the family WhatsApp group on my phone, a morbid fascination compelling me to watch the show unfold. Marcus had typed, "Alara, what did you do?" in all caps at 6:31 a.m., his panic palpable even through the screen. At 6:32 a.m., he tried to delete it, but it was too late. 17 people had already screenshot it, the digital evidence now immutable. Uncle Robert, who had been reveling in his viral video, suddenly wasn't finding anything funny anymore. His video had somehow made it onto TikTok overnight, and had already garnered 50,000 views, with comments tearing Marcus apart. The seeds of justice, sown in the darkness of betrayal, were now bearing bitter fruit, and the harvest was just beginning. What other secrets would the morning light expose? The chaos that erupted on Christmas morning was a symphony of consequences, each note a direct result of Marcus's decade of deceit. His partners were the first dominoes to fall, a rapid succession of panicked calls and frantic messages. Carl, Fred, Rick, Andy, Uma, and Derek. I swear I'm not making up those names, though the acronym they spell is almost too perfect. A darkly humorous twist in this unfolding drama. Each of them received detailed, irrefutable documentation of Marcus's creative accounting, his shell companies, his offshore maneuvers, the emails I had meticulously crafted, filled with spreadsheets and legal precedents, left no room for doubt, no space for denial. The IRS tip line, a silent guardian of fiscal integrity, now held 5 years of discrepancies I had documented with a precision that would make any auditor weep with joy, tied up with a neat metaphorical bow. But the real treasure, the truly devastating blow, went to Serena's creditors, Big Tony and Vegas Mike, names that conjured images of shadowy backrooms and broken kneecaps, now possessed Marcus's actual assets, his hidden accounts, and undeniable proof that he had been systematically lying about his finances while his entitled daughter skipped payment after payment. It turns out, Big Tony does not appreciate being played for a fool, and the consequences of that particular deception would be swift and brutal. The sheer audacity of Marcus's lies, the way he had manipulated everyone around him, was breathtaking. He had built his empire on a foundation of sand, and now the tide was coming in, ready to wash it all away. My mother's email was different. It wasn't about financial ruin or legal repercussions, but about a deeper, more profound betrayal. I included the original will, the real one, the sacred document my father had entrusted to me, along with comprehensive documentation of every property transfer, every fund withdrawal, every single thing Marcus had stolen while she was lost in the fog of grief. I ended it with a simple yet devastating question, a spiritual challenge that cut to the very core of her being. Did you know, or did you choose not to know? It was a question that demanded introspection, a reckoning with her own complicity, her own silence. I knew it would be painful, but I also knew it was necessary for her own healing, for her own awakening. By 7 a.m., the relentless ringing of Marcus's phones had driven him to my door, not pounding, not demanding, but whimpering. Through the peephole, I could see him, a pathetic figure in his Christmas pajamas, a phone clutched in each hand, both ringing nonstop. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 30 minutes, his face pale and drawn, his usual arrogance replaced by a desperate, animalistic fear. Then, Serena's voice echoed through the hallway, shrill and indignant. She was screaming about her credit cards being declined at Starbucks. On Christmas morning, of all days, she had gone to Starbucks. The sheer entitlement, even in the face of her father's impending doom, was almost impressive. She was demanding Marcus fix it immediately, threatening to tell everyone about his side business if he didn't. Even I didn't know about a side business. This, I realized, was getting better than I had ever expected. The layers of his deceit were peeling back, revealing even more rot beneath. My mother arrived at 7:30 a.m., still in her nightgown, a coat hastily thrown over it, her hair disheveled. The look on her face wasn't anger, or sadness, or even the familiar mask of neutrality. It was an awakening. It was as if she had been sleepwalking for a decade, lost in a dream of false comfort, and had finally, brutally, opened her eyes. The fog of grief and manipulation had lifted, revealing the stark, painful truth. Marcus's phone showed 47 missed calls by 8 a.m. I know because he kept screaming the number, as if the sheer quantity of his impending doom would somehow make it less real. Lawyers, creditors, partners, investigators, even Serena's art school calling about fraudulent loan applications. Each ring was a nail in the coffin he had so meticulously built for himself. The family chat, a digital microcosm of our fractured family, had evolved from confusion to commentary. Cousin Sophia posted, "Karma's working overtime this Christmas." My grandmother, with her characteristic brevity and profound wisdom, simply wrote, "Finally." My mother hadn't said a word online, but I knew she had been reading every message, seeing every piece of evidence I had shared. The truth, once hidden, was now laid bare for all to see, and its weight was undeniable. By 9 a.m., 3 news vans were parked outside our building. It turns out, Uncle Robert's video hadn't just gone viral on TikTok. Someone had tagged it, "Evil Stepdad Gets Exposed," and it was trending. Marcus pushing me at dinner was playing on a loop across social media, each share adding another crack to his rapidly crumbling reputation. The world was watching, and the stage was set for the next act in this unfolding drama. What would Marcus do now that his carefully constructed world was in ruins, and his deepest secrets were exposed to the harsh light of day? Please hit that subscribe button, my dear friends. If you're finding yourself drawn into this story, if it resonates with a part of your soul that understands the quiet battles we fight, your support means the world to me, allowing me to share these deeply personal journeys of resilience and truth. And please, don't be a stranger in the comments below. I'd love to hear your own stories, your moments of unexpected clarity, your triumphs over adversity. What's a family secret that unexpectedly came to light for you? Or perhaps a time when you felt a profound shift in your own spiritual journey. Your experiences are powerful, and they connect us all. And if there's a particular kind of emotional or spiritual story you'd like to hear next, Let me know. Your suggestions truly inspire me. Just when I thought the storm had reached its peak, just when I allowed myself a fleeting moment of relief, Marcus, true to his serpentine nature, pulled what I can only describe as the reverse victim shuffle. It was a move so audacious, so utterly devoid of shame, that I almost admired its sheer audacity. Almost. 3 days after that explosive Christmas morning, I was sitting in my apartment, surrounded by a growing pile of legal documents, each one a testament to the intricate web of deceit I was unraveling. The doorbell rang at precisely 7 a.m., a sharp, insistent chime that was distinctly different from Marcus's desperate knocking. This was professional. This was calculated. The man standing at my door looked like he'd stepped straight out of a legal drama from Central Casting. Silver hair meticulously combed, an expensive, impeccably tailored suit, and a smile that probably cost more than my entire car. His name was Richard Sterling, and he handed me a stack of papers with the kind of flourish usually reserved for a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat. Except this rabbit had teeth. Marcus, the man whose world I had just meticulously dismantled, was suing me for $2 million. The charges were a bewildering mix of corporate espionage, defamation, and something called intentional infliction of emotional distress. That last one made a hollow, disbelieving laugh escape my lips, a sound that probably wasn't the reaction Richard Sterling had anticipated. It turns out Marcus had called in a favor from his golf buddy, the one who always cheated at the 9th hole. Richard Sterling wasn't just any lawyer. He was the guy, the one who had gotten 3 CEOs off on technicalities, a legal shark known for his ruthless tactics. His retainer alone cost more than Marcus had, but apparently he was working on contingency, betting on a big payout, betting on my downfall. The counterattack was, I had to admit, cleverly orchestrated. Marcus claimed I had used my position in corporate compliance to steal trade secrets, that I had violated confidentiality agreements, and that my malicious prosecution had cost him millions in lost business and reputation. He had even managed to find 2 former co-workers of mine, Kelly and Marcus. Yes, another Marcus. The irony was not lost on me. Both of whom had been fired for expense fraud, who were now willing to swear under oath that I had bragged about taking down my stepfather. The audacity was truly astounding. They were painting me as the villain, a vengeful stepdaughter consumed by jealousy, systematically destroying a hard-working family man. The narrative was insidious, designed to twist the truth into a grotesque caricature of reality. But the real shock came at noon. Serena, Marcus's daughter, showed up at my door, not with news media, but with a camera crew. She had hired a documentary filmmaker, a guy named Chad with a perpetually confused expression and a YouTube channel, to film her story of being victimized by a jealous, unstable stepsister. She stood in my hallway, her eyes welling up with fake tears, her voice trembling as she recounted a fabricated tale of how I had always resented her success, how I had fabricated evidence, how I was the real villain in this tragic family drama. The narrative was spreading like wildfire, fueled by Marcus's newly acquired PR firm, which, I later discovered, was just some guy named Doug, who ran a reputation management service from his mom's basement, but was surprisingly effective. The hashtag falsely accused started trending, gaining traction with alarming speed. They had even edited Uncle Robert's video, cleverly manipulating the footage to make it look like I had thrown myself down, a desperate act of self-sabotage. The internet, it turns out, loves a conspiracy theory, and the mob was quickly turning against me. By day 4, the vitriol was overwhelming. I was receiving death threats from strangers who had decided, based on a few manipulated videos and a carefully crafted PR campaign, that I was an evil stepdaughter trying to destroy a hardworking family man. My company, understandably, put me on administrative leave pending an internal investigation, a devastating blow to my professional reputation. My neighbor, a woman who had always seemed perfectly pleasant, started a rumor that I was mentally unstable, prone to dramatic outbursts. Even some family members, swayed by the relentless media onslaught and Marcus's convincing performance, began to question. Maybe Frank has a point, I overheard Aunt Carol whisper to Sophia. Maybe Alara did go too far. The seeds of doubt, once planted, were growing rapidly, choking out the truth. The worst moment came when my mother called. Her voice, usually so carefully neutral, was now laced with a chilling uncertainty, a quiet doubt that pierced me deeper than any of Marcus's accusations. "Ilara," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper, "Marcus's lawyer showed me documents. They look real. Did you plant evidence?" The fact that she could even ask that question, after everything, after all the years of Marcus's manipulation, after seeing the truth laid bare on Christmas morning, felt like being pushed all over again. It was a spiritual blow, a betrayal of a different kind, one that made me question everything. Marcus, meanwhile, went on local morning television, the kind of show that usually covers lost dogs and bake sales. He wore his best suit and what I now call his wounded deer expression, his eyes wide and mournful. He talked about raising me like his own daughter, about the pain of being betrayed, about just wanting our family back together. The host, a woman who clearly never fact-checked anything in her life, nodded sympathetically, completely taken in by his performance. Richard Sterling was good, really good. He had found a technicality in how I had accessed Marcus's phone. Apparently, looking at an unlocked phone could be considered unauthorized access to electronic devices. He had twisted my meticulous documentation into evidence of an obsessive vendetta. He had even suggested I had manipulated my elderly grandmother into participating in my scheme. The hearing was set for December 30th. The judge, Harold Feinstein, was known for favoring dramatic reversals, for theatrical courtroom showdowns. Marcus's team had momentum, media sympathy, and a narrative that was starting to stick. That night, I sat with my father's laptop, the beacon of truth, wondering if I had played my cards too early, if Marcus was about to flip the entire table, and if the spiritual balance my father had spoken of would ever truly be restored. The night of December 29th, the eve of the hearing, felt impossibly long. Every tick of the clock on my wall echoed the frantic beating of my heart. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every accusation, every moment of doubt that had been cast upon me. Had I truly gone too far? Was Marcus, with his silver-tongued lawyer and his manufactured victimhood, about to snatch victory from the jaws of justice? The thought was a bitter pill, a chilling fear that gnawed at the edges of my resolve. But then, as the first faint light of dawn began to pierce through the darkness, a different kind of energy stirred within me, a quiet certainty, a deep spiritual knowing that the truth, no matter how obscured, would always find its way to the surface. And just as that conviction settled in my soul, the carefully constructed counter-narrative of Marcus Caldwell began to collapse, not with a bang, but with a series of quiet, almost poetic implosions, like a house of cards caught in a sudden, unexpected hurricane. It started, ironically, with Doug, the reputation management expert operating from his mother's basement. It turns out that running a sophisticated PR campaign from your mom's basement has certain inherent limitations, specifically your mom. Doug's mother, Barbara, a woman of sharp wit and an even sharper memory, happened to recognize Marcus from her book club. Not her current book club, mind you, but one from 15 years ago, in Phoenix, Arizona. Back then, Marcus had gone by the name Francis Morrison Walsh, and he had, with chilling precision, scammed 6 unsuspecting widows out of their life savings before vanishing into thin air. Barbara didn't just call the police. She called her entire network of book clubs across 3 states. By noon, a staggering 14 different women had come forward, each with a heartbreaking story of betrayal, each detailing the same insidious scam, the same charming predator, just with different names and different dates. The wounded family man persona Marcus had so carefully cultivated evaporated faster than Serena's modeling career, leaving behind only the stench of his true nature. Then came the unexpected turn from Kelly and Marcus, my former co-workers, who had so readily agreed to testify against me. They had a sudden, rather dramatic attack of conscience, prompted, I later learned, by the FBI showing up at their doors. It turns out that lying in a federal investigation is still very much illegal, even if a fancy lawyer asks you to do it. They flipped faster than pancakes at a Sunday brunch, admitting that Marcus had paid them each $5,000 to fabricate their testimony, to paint me as a vengeful schemer. The weight of their false accusations, which had felt so heavy on my spirit, began to lift, replaced by a growing sense of vindication. The truth, it seemed, was indeed beginning to assert itself. unraveling the intricate tapestry of lies Marcus had woven. But the real bombshell, the one that truly shook the foundations of Marcus's defense, came from an entirely unexpected source: Richard Sterling's paralegal. Her name was Dorothy, a quiet, unassuming woman who had been meticulously taking notes in every single meeting. What Marcus, in his arrogance, hadn't known was that our state is a one-party consent state for recordings. Dorothy, with a quiet determination, had been recording everything, legally. Marcus, completely oblivious to this fact, had been shockingly candid about his plans, fabricating evidence, bribing witnesses, and his detailed strategy to flee to Costa Rica once he secured the $2 million settlement money from me. Dorothy didn't just quit her job. She marched straight into the district attorney's office with 6 hours of damning recordings, meticulously color-coded transcripts, and what she simply called her conscience folder. Every dirty trick, every unethical maneuver Richard and Marcus had planned, was laid bare. It turned out Dorothy's own daughter had been scammed by a stepfather years ago, and she had been waiting for exactly this moment, a quiet warrior for justice. And then there was Chad, the documentary filmmaker Serena had hired. In his misguided attempt to build buzz for Serena's victim narrative, he had been live-streaming a lot of his raw footage. What it actually did was capture Serena admitting, on camera, that she knew her father was guilty. But who cares? We need the money. She also, quite casually, mentioned Marcus's side business again. Apparently, he had been selling fake luxury goods online, using the company warehouse, Vance Logistics, for storage. The pieces were all falling into place, each revelation a new nail in Marcus's rapidly closing coffin. By evening, Marcus was at my door again, but this time, there were no lawyers, no camera crews, just him, alone, desperate, and somehow even more pathetic than before. He actually tried to play the family card. "Alara," he pleaded, his voice hoarse. "We can work this out between us. We're family." I recorded the entire conversation on my phone, every desperate plea, every pathetic attempt at manipulation, including the part where he offered me $50,000 to drop everything, then $100,000, then finally, "Whatever you want, Alara. Just name your price." My mother arrived while Marcus was still begging, her face a mixture of shock and dawning understanding. She had spent the day with my grandmother, going through old photos, old documents, and apparently old recordings. It turns out my father had suspected Marcus was a con artist long before he died. He had hired a private investigator, meticulously gathered evidence, but the cancer had taken him before he could act. My mother had found it all in a safety deposit box she had completely forgotten about, a testament to how grief can play strange tricks on memory. The look on Marcus's face when my mother played the recording of him bragging to someone about landing the grieving widow jackpot was almost worth everything. Almost. The stage was now set, not for a courtroom drama, but for a spiritual reckoning, a cleansing fire that would burn away the lies and reveal the truth in its purest, most unadorned form. That night, after Marcus had finally slinked away, his pathetic pleas echoing in the empty hallway, and my mother had gone home to process the decade of deception that had just been laid bare, I sat alone with my father's laptop. The air in my apartment felt heavy, charged with the weight of revelations, both painful and profoundly liberating. There was one folder I had been deliberately avoiding, a digital sanctuary I hadn't dared to breach. It was labeled simply, "For my daughter. Open when ready." The words, penned by my father's own hand in a digital note, were a testament to his enduring love and foresight. Now, after everything, after the public humiliation, the legal threats, the doubt, and the dawning truth, I finally felt ready. My heart, once a frantic drum, now beat with a steady, resolute rhythm. With a deep breath, I clicked on the folder. The first file was a video. My father's face filled the screen, thinner from the ravages of chemotherapy, but his eyes, those kind, intelligent eyes I missed so desperately, were still bright, still full of life and an unwavering spirit. He was sitting in his study, surrounded by his beloved books, the timestamp showing it was taken just 3 weeks before he died. His voice was weaker than I remembered, a soft rasp, but his words were steel, imbued with a power that transcended his physical frailty. "Alara," he began, his gaze piercing through the screen, directly into my soul. If you're watching this, it means Marcus Caldwell has finally shown his true colors. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you myself, my darling girl, but I've left you the tools to protect yourself, to finish what I started. He held up a folder. Its contents a mystery. Everything in here is backed up in 3 places. This laptop, a safety deposit box at First National Bank, and with my attorney Mitchell Reeves in Denver. It was a spiritual inheritance, a final act of love and protection from beyond the grave. What followed was 20 minutes of my father methodically laying out Marcus's entire history, a chilling chronicle of a life dedicated to deceit. His real name, my father revealed, was Franklin Morris Worthington. He had been running the exact same con for 20 years, meticulously targeting vulnerable widows with children across 7 different states. My father, with the quiet determination that defined him, had tracked down 11 of Marcus's previous victims, recorded their heartbreaking stories, and gathered police reports from various jurisdictions. Marcus wasn't just a con man. He was a serial predator, a wolf in sheep's clothing who specialized in exploiting grief and trust. The sheer scale of his depravity, the calculated cruelty of his actions, sent a shiver down my spine. But then, my father revealed something that made me gasp aloud, a twist so profound, so unexpected, that it completely recontextualized everything. I didn't confront him, Alara, he explained, his voice softening, because I needed him to think he'd won. You see, sweetheart, the FBI has been watching Marcus for 5 years. Agent Sarah Chen approached me 6 months ago. We've been building a federal case against him, a net designed to catch him once and for all. My mind reeled. The FBI? Agent Sarah Chen? It was an unseen hand, a silent guardian working in the shadows, guided by my father's foresight. The video continued with my father explaining the intricate trap he had set. The will Marcus thought he had destroyed? That was a fake, a carefully crafted decoy. The real one was filed in Denver, ironclad and unbreakable, designed to protect my inheritance and the family business. The business accounts Marcus had access to? They were honeypots, with trackers on every single transaction, every illicit transfer. Even the house, our beloved family home, was in an irrevocable trust that would activate on my 30th birthday or upon irrefutable evidence of Marcus's fraud, whichever came first. I knew I wouldn't be there to activate it, my father said, tears finally welling in his eyes, but I knew my daughter would be strong enough to finish what I started. His faith in me, even from beyond the veil, was a powerful spiritual balm to my wounded soul. The next file in the folder was labeled simply, Sarah Chen, FBI contact. I dialed the number with shaking hands, my heart pounding with a mixture of trepidation and exhilarating hope. She answered on the second ring, her voice calm and professional, as if she had been waiting for years. Miss Vance, she said, I was wondering when you'd call. Your father said you'd know when the time was right. What followed was a conversation that changed everything, a revelation that pulled back the final curtain on Marcus's elaborate charade. Marcus's secretary, the one he had been having an affair with, the woman I had seen in his office, was in fact Agent Chen, undercover for 3 years. She hadn't been having an affair. She had been meticulously documenting every single one of his crimes. The side business, selling fake luxury goods, it connected to an international fraud ring the FBI had been tracking for a decade, a vast network of illicit activities. We were waiting for Marcus to make his big move, Agent Chen explained, her voice devoid of emotion, to commit enough federal crimes to ensure he couldn't slip away. The lawsuit he had filed against me? That's it, she said. He's now committed federal wire fraud, witness tampering, and about 15 other felonies. We're moving in tomorrow morning. The sheer scale of the operation, the years of patient surveillance, the intricate planning by my father and the FBI, left me breathless. But my father, ever the strategist, had left one more surprise. A folder labeled The Network contained contact information for all of Marcus's previous victims. Over the past week, while I had been fighting Marcus's insidious PR campaign, they had been organizing. Barbara from the book club, my grandmother's friend, had connected them all. They had formed a victims support group, hired a collective attorney, and were preparing a massive civil suit. The spiritual warriors, the silent sufferers, were now ready to rise. The final video file was short, recorded the day before my father entered hospice. He was in my childhood room, sitting on my bed, holding the worn teddy bear he had given me when I was 5. "Ilara," he said, his voice a tender whisper, "I need you to know 3 things. First, I'm proud of who you've become. Second, your mother will need time to heal, but she'll come back to herself. Be patient with her. And third," he smiled, that mischievous, loving smile I had missed so much, "Marcus's biggest mistake was underestimating you. He thinks you're just a sweet compliance officer. He has no idea you got your fighting spirit from both your parents. Give him hell, sweetheart, and then live your beautiful life." The video ended with him placing the teddy bear on my pillow and whispering, "Justice isn't revenge. It's balance. Restore the balance, my darling girl." His words, a sacred mantra, resonated deep within my soul, transforming my anger into a focused, spiritual purpose. The stage was set for the final act, not of vengeance, but of profound, undeniable balance. December 30th dawned with a fury, a relentless blizzard that blanketed the city in a pristine, yet ominous, white. The world outside my window was transformed into a silent, ethereal landscape, a stark contrast to the storm that was about to erupt within the courthouse walls. My phone call with Agent Chen the night before had been both exhilarating and sobering. The sheer scale of Marcus's criminal enterprise, the years of meticulous planning by my father and the FBI, the silent dance of justice unfolding in the shadows. It was almost too much to comprehend. But as I dressed that morning, a quiet strength settled over me, a profound sense of purpose. This wasn't just about vengeance. It was about restoring balance, about honoring my father's legacy, and about protecting others from the kind of predatory deceit that had almost consumed my family. The arrest happened at precisely 6 a.m. The FBI, it turns out, does not believe in sleeping in, especially when a major operation is underway. I heard the commotion from my apartment, the muffled shouts, the frantic banging on doors. Through my peephole, I saw the flashing blue and red lights, the dark figures moving with swift precision. Marcus was apprehended in his underwear, a pathetic figure stripped of his carefully constructed facade, his usual arrogance replaced by a raw, animalistic terror. Serena was there too, screaming about her rights and demanding to know what was happening, her entitlement unwavering even in the face of federal agents. And somehow Doug, the hapless PR guy, was also present, having apparently spent the night crisis managing from Marcus's couch. All 3 were arrested, though Doug was later released once the agents realized he was just catastrophically stupid, not criminally culpable. The image of Marcus, shivering in the cold morning air, surrounded by federal agents, was a powerful, almost spiritual moment of reckoning. The hearing scheduled for that morning, the one where Judge Harold Feinstein was prepared to hear Marcus's $2 million lawsuit against me, became something else entirely. The blizzard outside seemed to mirror the whirlwind of legal proceedings inside. Instead of presiding over a civil dispute, Judge Feinstein found himself overseeing an emergency asset freeze, a swift and decisive move by the federal government to prevent Marcus from liquidating his ill-gotten gains. The FBI presented their case with the kind of precision that made my compliance-loving heart sing. Every detail, every transaction, every shell company was laid bare, a testament to years of meticulous investigation. It was a masterclass in dismantling a criminal enterprise, and I watched, captivated, as the truth, in all its brutal clarity, finally emerged. Agent Chen took the stand, her demeanor calm, professional, and utterly devastating. 3 years of undercover work, living a lie, pretending to be Marcus's lover, were distilled into 2 hours of powerful, irrefutable testimony. She documented everything: the embezzlement, the fraud, the money laundering, the international connections to the fake luxury goods ring. And then, she revealed something that sent a chill down my spine, a detail so heinous it almost made me physically ill. Marcus's plan to murder my father by switching his medications, a plan he had abandoned only because my father was already dying. The courtroom went silent, a collective gasp echoing through the hallowed halls of justice. It was a moment of profound horror, a stark reminder of the depths of Marcus's depravity and the spiritual darkness that had consumed him. Richard Sterling, Marcus's high-priced lawyer, tried to withdraw from the case so fast he actually tripped over his briefcase, a comical moment amidst the gravity of the proceedings. But Judge Feinstein wasn't done with him. It turns out Dorothy, the quiet paralegal, had recorded Richard knowingly suborning perjury. instructing Kelly and Marcus to lie under oath. His law license was suspended before lunch, a swift and just consequence for his unethical conduct. Then, like an avenging army, the victims' network appeared. 14 women, all over 60, all dressed in sensible shoes and pearls, each one a testament to Marcus's long history of preying on vulnerable widows. They told their stories, one after another, with different names and dates, but the same heartbreaking narrative of betrayal and financial ruin. Marcus had stolen over $3 million over 20 years. The civil suits alone would utterly destroy him, but the criminal charges, the federal charges, were what truly mattered. The IRS agent who testified actually smiled while reading the charges. Tax evasion, tax fraud, filing false returns. The list went on for 20 minutes. A litany of Marcus's financial transgressions. He owed $1.4 million in back taxes, but with penalties and interest, it was closer to $3 million. They had frozen everything, every single asset, even the quarters in his car's cup holder. My mother took the stand to validate the trust documents, her composure remarkable, her voice clear and steady. When asked about Marcus's character, she simply said, her gaze unwavering, "I was grieving. He was hunting." The entire courtroom went silent, a profound acknowledgement of the truth of her words, a spiritual awakening for all who heard it. But the moment that broke Marcus completely, that shattered the last vestiges of his arrogant facade, was when Serena took the stand for the prosecution. Faced with her own charges, she had flipped faster than her failed businesses. She detailed every scam, every lie, every crime she had witnessed, even producing recordings she had made of Marcus, her own insurance for when he inevitably turned on her. The scorpion, it seemed, had stung itself. The federal prosecutor, a woman named Jessica Torres, who looked like she ate defense attorneys for breakfast, laid out the full scope of Marcus's crimes. This wasn't just fraud. It was racketeering. Marcus hadn't acted alone. He was part of a network that targeted widows across the country. The fake luxury goods were funding terrorism. The money laundering went through 6 countries. Marcus wasn't just facing jail time. He was facing the kind of jail time usually reserved for mob bosses. By the end of the day, Marcus had been denied bail as a flight risk. His passport had already been flagged when he tried to book a ticket to Costa Rica that morning. Every asset was frozen, every avenue of escape blocked. The man who had pushed me down was now falling, and unlike me, no one was going to help him up. The balance, as my father had promised, was finally being restored, a profound spiritual justice unfolding before my very eyes. New Year's Eve arrived, not with the usual frantic rush of celebration, but with a profound sense of peace, a quiet vindication that settled deep within my soul. The blizzard had subsided, leaving behind a world sparkling with fresh snow, as if cleansed by the very forces of nature. The family gathering was at my grandmother's house this time, a deliberate choice. She had declared the old venue, the Caldwell estate, tainted by Marcus's presence, and when grandmother used that tone, nobody dared to argue. The atmosphere was surreal, a delicate blend of relief, reflection, and a dawning hope. The same people who had watched in stunned silence as Marcus pushed me, the same faces that had been frozen in indifference or doubt, were now treating me like a hero, their eyes filled with a newfound respect, even admiration. It was a strange, almost uncomfortable shift, but one I accepted with a quiet grace. Uncle Robert, bless his perpetually well-meaning but often misguided heart, had become my biggest supporter. His viral video, the one that had initially brought me so much public humiliation, had ironically been optioned for a true crime documentary, and he was getting paid handsomely for it. He donated half of his earnings to a domestic violence charity, keeping the rest for what he called his apology fund. He'd been taking me to very expensive dinners, trying to make up for being, as he put it, an absolute idiot. His earnest attempts at atonement, though sometimes clumsy, were genuinely touching. My cousin Sophia, however, had proven herself a true ally, a steadfast pillar of support through everything. She had spent the entire week helping other victims from the network file their paperwork, working pro bono, because, as she simply stated, watching Marcus get destroyed is payment enough. She had even started dating Agent Chen's partner, a very nice FBI accountant named David, who, to her delight, loved spreadsheets as much as she loved justice. It was a beautiful, unexpected blossoming of connection amidst the ashes of deceit. My mother arrived early to help set up, her presence a quiet testament to her own journey of healing. She had been in intensive therapy since December 27th, an urgent program for victims of long-term manipulation and emotional abuse. She looked different, not just happier, but truly present in a way she hadn't been for a decade. The vacant stare was gone, replaced by a clarity in her eyes, a renewed spark of her former self. She had even started wearing red again, my father's favorite color on her, a subtle but powerful reclaiming of her identity. She approached me, her gaze steady, her hand reaching out to gently touch my arm. "Ilara," she began, her voice soft but firm, "I need to apologize properly. Not to the room, but directly to you." Her eyes welled up, but no tears fell. "Not for being fooled. Grief makes fools of us all, and Marcus was a master manipulator, but for choosing comfort over courage, for letting him dim your light to avoid seeing my own darkness. You deserved a mother who fought for you. Instead, you had to fight for both of us." The room went silent, but it was a different silence than Christmas Eve. This was not the silence of indifference or complicity. This was the silence of respect, of acknowledgement, of profound empathy. It was the kind of moment that heals things, that mends the deepest wounds of the spirit. My grandmother, now 86 and sharper than ever, stood up, raising her champagne glass. Her voice, though soft, carried an undeniable authority. "This family failed Ilara once," she declared, her eyes sweeping over each face in the room. "We will not fail her again, and we will not forget that justice came not from us, but despite us. May we earn the forgiveness she's showing us by being here tonight." As everyone clinked glasses, a wave of warmth washed over me, a sense of belonging I hadn't felt in years. The spiritual balance was indeed shifting, the scales tipping back towards light. At exactly midnight, as the ball dropped on television in Times Square, my phone received a notification. It was a simple message, yet it held the weight of a lifetime. Trust activated. The family business, Vance Logistics, was officially mine. The house, our beloved family home, was now legally in my name. Every protection my father had meticulously put in place, every safeguard against Marcus's greed, had triggered precisely as intended. It was January 1st. New year, new life, new beginning. The future, once shrouded in uncertainty and fear, now stretched before me, a canvas waiting to be painted with purpose and hope. Marcus, meanwhile, was spending his New Year's Eve in federal detention, a stark contrast to the lavish parties he once hosted. Brittany, his real daughter, had been released on bail, but was under house arrest at a halfway house, her Instagram dreams replaced by court-mandated community service. She'd even gotten a job at a fast food restaurant. The uniform, I imagined, did not photograph well for her social media. Someone, with a mischievous sense of humor, had sent me a photo from the detention center's New Year's celebration. Apparently, they'd had sparkling apple cider and stale cookies. Marcus was sitting alone in a corner, wearing orange instead of Armani, his face a mask of utter despair. The man who had always needed to be the center of attention, the loudest voice in the room, was now just inmate number 4847329, a forgotten shadow in a crowded cell. The poetic justice of it all was almost overwhelming. The best part, the truly unexpected blessing that emerged from the ashes of Marcus's downfall, was the documentary. The producers, captivated by the viral video and the unfolding drama, wanted to interview me. The working title they proposed, Push Down, Standing Up, A Christmas Crime Story, perfectly encapsulated the journey. They were offering enough money to restart the scholarship fund my father had created before he died, a fund that Marcus had systematically plundered. The thought that Marcus's greed and cruelty would ultimately fund other people's dreams, that his destruction would become a catalyst for good, was a profound and deeply satisfying form of spiritual justice. It wasn't revenge, it was balance, exactly as my father had envisioned. The future, once a terrifying unknown, now held the promise of purpose, of rebuilding, of honoring a legacy that had almost been lost. 6 months later, the world had shifted again, settling into a new, more truthful rhythm. I sat in my father's office, the very room where he had built his dreams, the place Marcus had so arrogantly usurped. Now, it was truly mine. The worn leather of his chair, the scent of old books and ambition, enveloped me in a comforting embrace as I prepared for Marcus's sentencing hearing. The federal case had been swift and decisive, a testament to the meticulous work of Agent Chen and my father's foresight. Marcus, in a desperate attempt to salvage some semblance of leniency, had pleaded guilty to 47 charges. But I knew, deep in my soul, that he wouldn't get it. His crimes were too extensive, his betrayal too profound, his lack of remorse too evident. The judge presiding over the sentencing was a woman named Patricia Hawkins, a formidable figure with piercing eyes and an unwavering commitment to justice. As fate would have it, she had been one of my father's clients years ago, a detail that added another layer of poetic justice to the proceedings. Judge Hawkins didn't hide her disgust as she reviewed the evidence, her voice resonating with a quiet fury. Marcus, stripped of his expensive suits and his manufactured charm, looked small and insignificant in the courtroom, a shadow of the man who had once commanded attention. When she delivered her verdict, her voice was clear and unwavering. "Marcus Caldwell, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 15 years. The courtroom erupted in applause, a highly unusual display, but Judge Hawkins allowed it, her own eyes reflecting a flicker of satisfaction. "Sometimes," she said, her voice echoing with profound meaning, "justice deserves recognition." Brittany, surprisingly, had found a path to a different kind of redemption. She had received 2 years of probation and 3,000 hours of community service. The forced humility of working at a fast food restaurant, the daily grind of earning an honest wage, had, against all odds, begun to chip away at her entitlement. She had actually become a decent employee, even getting promoted to shift manager. Her Instagram, once a shrine to superficiality, now featured motivational quotes about redemption and pictures of her mopping floors with captions like, "Humble beginnings, character development at last." It was a small, unexpected victory, a testament to the possibility of change, even in the most unlikely of souls. The family business, Vance Logistics, had not just recovered, it had thrived. Freed from Marcus's toxic management and predatory schemes, the employees, a loyal and dedicated group, had increased productivity by 40%. We had won back contracts Marcus had lost through his negligence, and gained new ones from the unexpected publicity surrounding the case. I had instituted profit sharing, making everyone invested in our collective success, fostering a sense of ownership and community that had been sorely missing. It was no longer just a business. It was a family, a testament to my father's vision, now renewed and revitalized. My mother, too, had found her own new beginning. She had sold the tainted family home, a place now filled with too many painful memories, and bought a smaller, charming place near the beach, a sanctuary of peace and new possibilities. She had started dating my father's old friend, Mitchell Reeves, the lawyer from Denver who had kept the real Will safe. He was nothing like Marcus, quiet, kind, and genuinely good. He even asked me for my permission before proposing to my mother, a gesture of respect that touched me deeply. I gave it gladly, knowing that she had finally found a true partner, a man who would cherish her. The Victims Network, the group of women Marcus had preyed upon, had become a formal nonprofit organization, helping other widows recognize and escape predatory relationships. Barbara from the book club was its passionate president, and they had already helped dozens of women reclaim their lives. They had named it the Alara Foundation, a tribute that made my eyes well up with tears every time I saw the letterhead. Agent Chen, Sarah, as I now called her, had become a dear friend. The Marcus Caldwell case had earned her a well-deserved promotion and a teaching position at Quantico, where she used his case as a textbook example of how greed and narcissism inevitably create their own downfall. Marcus had become, quite literally, a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the consequences of a life lived in deceit. The documentary had aired to huge ratings, captivating audiences with its raw emotion and the intricate unraveling of Marcus's schemes. Uncle Robert, surprisingly, had become a minor celebrity, giving talks about bystander intervention and the profound importance of helping family members in need. He donated all his speaking fees to domestic violence shelters, a genuine act of contrition and a testament to his own growth. And, in a gesture that truly touched my heart, he bought me a car with his video royalties, a beautiful blue electric vehicle with a license plate that read, "Pushed Back." It was a constant, gentle reminder of how far I had come, and how a moment of profound injustice could spark a movement for change. But the best moment, the one that truly brought a sense of closure and a deep spiritual satisfaction, came when I visited Marcus in prison. It wasn't for closure in the traditional sense, nor was it for forgiveness. It was to deliver something, a final symbolic act. I handed him a single photograph, a crisp color print of the Christmas dinner table, fully set, just as it had been that fateful night. My seat, Alara's throne, was prominently displayed, now adorned with a small bronze plaque bearing its name. "That seat, Marcus," I told him, my voice calm and steady, my gaze unwavering, was never about hierarchy. It was about family recognizing family. It was about love and legacy and belonging. You'll never understand that, because you've never been family. You were just a parasite who mistook patience for weakness. He tried to respond, his eyes wide with a mixture of anger and a dawning, horrifying realization, but I was already walking away, leaving him with the stark image of what he had lost, what he had destroyed. The guards later told me he had stared at that photo for hours, the weight of its symbolism finally crushing him. He finally understood that his one brutal push, that single moment of cruelty and arrogance, had cost him everything he had schemed for, everything he had stolen, everything he had built on lies. And in doing so, it had given me back everything he had tried to steal. The balance, as my father had promised, was truly restored. A year after that Christmas push, we gathered again for the holidays. The table was full, fuller than before actually, brimming with genuine warmth and laughter. Sarah Chen, my dear friend and the brilliant FBI agent, came, as did several women from the Alara Foundation, the Victims Network, who had nowhere else to go, finding solace and family among us. Mitchell, my mother's new husband, was there, nervously practicing his toast, his kind eyes beaming with happiness. Even Brittany had been invited, though she chose to volunteer at a homeless shelter instead, sending a genuinely heartfelt card, a small but significant step on her own path to redemption. My grandmother, now 86 and sharper than ever, raised her glass for a toast, her voice clear and resonant. "Last year," she began, her eyes twinkling, "we learned that silence in the face of injustice makes us complicit. This year, we've learned that redemption is possible for those who seek it, and justice, while sometimes delayed, is worth fighting for." As everyone clinked glasses, a profound sense of gratitude washed over me. I thought about my father's words, his final, loving wisdom. Justice isn't revenge, it's balance. The balance had been restored. Marcus had pushed me down in front of 23 silent witnesses, a public act of humiliation. He was now falling for 25 years in front of the entire world, and this time, nobody was silent about what he deserved. They say you should be careful who you push down. They might know how to get back up. But Marcus learned a harder, more profound lesson that Christmas. Be careful who you push down at Christmas dinner. They might have a dead father who planned for this exact moment, an FBI agent for a pretend mistress, and a grandmother who's been documenting your crimes while pretending to be confused about her iPhone. The price of one push, one moment of unchecked cruelty, was everything Marcus had schemed for, stolen, and built on lies. It all came crashing down from a single arrogant act. He'd thought he was pushing down a weak stepdaughter. Instead, he'd pushed the first domino in his own spectacular self-made destruction. And in that destruction, a new life, a new legacy, and a restored balance emerged, shining brighter than ever before.